Sent to a third party. All right, so I've seen Poetry and Prose is live, Gush, on YouTube. Right.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Poetry and Prose. It is the 9th of February, 2025. This is our Author of the Month meeting for February, and we are honored to be celebrating Heather Latu Ferguson's work. Our chairperson for today will be Krishna, and I will hand it over to him. Krishna, thank you for chairing.
Right, you're welcome. Thank you so much. Poetry and Prose Zoom meeting. Congratulations, Heather, on being selected as Author of the Month for February. By her own reckoning, Heather has been with this group for half of its history. She has been featured before as Author of the Month and has fulfilled the role of chairperson on a number of occasions. We say congratulations to you on your new book, hot on the heels of the publication of Circe's Dance. And as I said, congratulations on being featured as the Author of the Month for February 2025. You are being interviewed by Frank Mohan. Ever since we featured him as Author of the Month, I can remember when, with his Love Has Two Moons, and he has another book called The Peripatetic Skylark. Frank has been regularly attending our fortnightly sessions, reading excerpts and making contributions. Most of all, he listens very attentively to what goes on. This is the first for him, as far as I know, as he prepares to interview his fellow Canadian diasporic member from the Twin Islands of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. He's a medical doctor whose rise to that status, if I am allowed to say, surprised the expectations of some, perhaps even himself.
Yeah.
As he was known to be a great entertainer in any gathering with his ubiquitous sense of humor. I hand over to the two Canadians in this international forum now, Poetry and Prose.
Thank you, Krishna.
Thank you. Well, you know, it's an honor to interview Heather Latu Ferguson. As Krishna said, she's a longtime member of Poetry and Prose, and herself a prolific writer through both prose and poetry. So Heather, as you know, is an expat living in New Brunswick, Canada, and her writings stimulated diaspora into nostalgia about our homeland and the fond memories we have left behind. And she really resurrects colorful characters and anecdotes about village life that have faded in the minds of not only the diaspora, but even in the minds of Trinidadians living in Trinidad, where societal norms of the 40s, 50s, and 60s have moved on in alignment with the modern world. Well, what I mean by that is even younger people today have lost some of the expressions and some of the things we used to talk about in the 50s and 60s and before that. I know I have a Facebook friend. I've never met him personally. He's from Trinidad, and he's in his early 40s. And I mentioned the expression 4-day morning one time, and he didn't know what that was. He had to go and ask his grandfather. So Heather, we are honoring you and your second book, Pikang Pilau and Pepper Sauce, your first book in Amazon being Circe's Dance, which has been well received. And, you know, of course, Heather has published other books, you know, previously. There's one, Cold Fire, which is a book of essays, and also a book of poetry and then a 3-volume set, The Laltus of Trinidad, The Mulchansings of Freeport and Bishop Ainsley High School, and a book called Caribbean Odyssey. It's a book of poetry called The View from My Armchair, and Tales from the Swamp, which was totally short stories written in the Trinidadian vernacular. And one called A Betrayal of Fortune, about a relative who was in the Second World War, and a children's book, Cooler and the Prince. So she's really the quintessential prolific writer. So Heather, we are honoring you, and it'll be quite a revelation about the inspiration for writing your book, especially concerning the pretty spicy stories, loose themes, and rough language. Being well aware that you were brought up in a prim and proper conservative and religious household in the 50s and 60s. I recall at the last meeting, you asked Motilal if it was okay to say the word Bamsi. So what do you have to say for yourself with the inspiration for writing this book?
Well, you know, I grew up in the home of my grandfather, who was a minister, and we were very conservative, as you say. But given that, 2 of his daughters went out and got married out of wedlock, which brought a lot of shame on the household and on him, his reputation as a minister, especially. So the subsequent generation, me and my female cousins, we were really kept under lock and key. You couldn't leave the front gate. You know, so because they were so scared we'd go out and do the same thing. You know, we paid the price for their sins. So we grew up unaware of a whole side of society. So now I think my foray into that, featuring that side of life, you know, it's an exploration of human weaknesses and obsessions that reflect real lives that was forbidden to us. So I guess I'm living vicariously through the characters that I create. So that's an excuse.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm well aware of the, you know, who was the minister, you said?
My grandfather.
Your grandfather.
Henry Laltu, yeah.
So I'm well aware of, so he was very closely related or associated with the Canadian missionaries and so on. And I'm well aware of the efforts of the Canadian missionaries that rescued many indentured laborers and provided educational avenues through which we gained success in life and education. However, there were instances of malfeasance by a few of the missionaries that sullied the good work of the majority. Have any of these transgressions found their way into your stories?
Absolutely. You know, I in my first book, Susie's Dance, the first story, 8 Cents and the Snake, I end it with an incident that really happened to my grandfather. He owned some land in Faizabad that was, unbeknownst to him, had oil, but the geologist son of one of the missionaries knew that, and they coaxed him to sell the land cheap to them, and it became the Apex oil field. So he was always vexed about that his whole life. You know, that's a story that probably would be lost, but I put it in that story. And then in this book, my second book, Pecan, Pilau and Pepper Sauce, the second one published to Amazon, I have 2 stories where the local white missionary minister has sexual relations with some of the locals, and that's something that happened, but not frequently, as you said. In the second story, Gloria and the Minister, the idea for that theme actually comes from Somerset Maugham, the short story writer. He visited the colonies a lot and wrote stories based on those settings. And he has a short story called Rain, where a minister goes to convert a prostitute to Christianity, and she converts him to her way of life. So I kind of use that theme quite loosely and in that story. So yeah, you know, I guess I kind of have some payback to these ministers that took advantage of us.
Well, it's interesting that when you came to Canada, you came to New Brunswick, an area from which a number of missionaries came.
Yeah.
And you made contact there with the families of some of them. I know that.
Yeah.
Now, so you did your first degree at Mount Allison University, and you majored in English literature and religious studies. Can you tell us something about your journey as an author? Trinidad, New Brunswick.
Well, actually, my religious studies professor urged me to write about the indenture history of my family. And I was young and forward-looking and didn't want to be saddled with that. However, once I got a job at the local newspaper as an advertorial writer, and I had to kind of write for a living, I also, as technology advanced, I wrote for an online magazine called No Moncton, and I did a weekly column called the Farmers Market Report. It was fun, that job, because I could go around to different businesses and go to the farmers market every weekend and have fun and meet people and talk to them and do a write-up on them.
Mm.
And so that really, once I retired, I just kept writing. One Christmas, Dad, I didn't know what to get him for Christmas. He has, at his age, had everything. So I wrote a story about my childhood in Penal, and that really was the little germ that got started. Then after he passed away, I kind of stopped writing for a while. And then as time went on, I did the Laltus of Trinidad. Then I did Mum's Family, the Mulchansings of Freeport. And those were all family based on genealogy. And so I never really published any of those books. My first publication was Circe's Dance with our publisher, the Middle Road Publishers of Brampton and Ontario. And then this one was done through Harold and uploaded to Amazon as well. So I've got those two on Amazon.
Mm.
And but yeah, I've been writing forever. I guess it's now a way of life for me. And of course, I contributed to Musings in a Tea Shop.
Yes.
So I'm in that anthology as well, also on Amazon.
When you were writing the column for the farmers market and so on, I could see you being well recognized. And if you'd go to the market, I could hear the people saying, there she is, there she
Yeah.
is. So tell us about the significance of the title of that book, Pecan, Pilau, and Pepper Sauce. Now, I left Trinidad about 62 years ago at age 16. And I knew pilau and pepper sauce, but I couldn't figure out what pecan was. I think you had to
Well,
explain it.
pecan is kind of like a local gossip, but really what's more to it than that is that it was the repartee, the witty repartee that took place between two rival calypsonians in the calypso tent around carnival time. The back and forth. Lord Melody and Sparrow did a lot of that back and forth,
Yeah.
And so that's Pecan. Also, I think there was a local newspaper just before the Express that had a lot of gossip in it, and I thought it was called Pecan. Dad used to talk about it. So Pecan for me, the way I want to use it in this title, it refers to that colorful dialect that we have. The Palau, of course, is the mix of themes, the mix of cultural themes. And of course, the pepper sauce has to do with the sexual, spicy sprinklings in some of the stories. Not all of them, some of them.
So, I was thinking about future projects. You had me read a pictorial story of your family, which was really entertaining. And I know I've told you this before. I really look forward to see when you're going to publish that as a novel or as a book. And it was really well done. So what sort of things you're looking for in the future publications?
Well, I kind of working on a series of essays. When I say essays, they're not based in any kind of fiction. They're not based on fantasy. They're actual, nonfiction. Trinidad viewed through the lens of the expat in the diaspora. When it's probably memory based, but not in a short story form. They're longer essays. So I'm looking at possibly publishing something like that. These are stories that I have read them at Poetry and Prose. I have brought them to virtual story time. and even to the My Trinidad magazine. But I feel that if I publish it on Amazon, it gets a wider audience.
Mhm.
So that's something I'm looking at doing, but just kind of toying with the
Yeah.
idea right now.
Well, personally, I consider myself a novice writer. Most of my life I've spent writing scientific papers, but this is my first foray into creative writing and fiction. And when I ask somebody to read my work for me, I'm not looking for accolades. I'm really looking for criticism, constructive criticism. How do you handle criticism and reviews at your level of writing?
Well, I'm kind of used to it because, you can't work for decades at the newspaper and not get criticism and not have to do edits and rewrites. And, you have to please your customer. In the case of an editorial writer, you have to please the people you're writing about, but you also have to please the newspaper people.
Yeah.
And then you have rules. You have to get everything in like 100 words, 1,000 words, so there's a lot of discipline, and I welcome critiques that are constructive. However, there are all kinds of people out there ready to give you their two bits, and they don't know what they're talking about. And those, I don't appreciate unwarranted negativity for the sake of negativity, because there are people out there that like to think that they know better than you do. But you can weed those out. But constructive criticism, fine with me. Change this, change that, fine with me.
So what advice you'd have for aspiring writers? Anything that you've
Keep writing, keep writing. If you have a writer's block, go with the flow, take it easy, don't panic, keep writing. Write if you're happy, write if you're sad.
Yeah.
As in all things, practice makes perfect. And also you have to realize that, you're a valuable holder of a unique look at your own story. We all have stories. So, and it's to get it out there.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I've been thinking of a particular title for the last 3 or 4 years, and I haven't gotten the guts to sit down and start. I think I should write something based on what you're saying there.
Well, you know what I do sometimes? I have not an idea in my head at all. But now, there's this Trinidad comedian who's a teacher. His name is Stefan. He's so funny. And his thing is he comes out with these different names. I don't know if he makes them up or what, but there's one name that he came out with Saraswati did this and that, and I just took that name and I just sit there and I type it in, and then the story goes from there. So sometimes, you might not have a thought in your head, but just start typing and see what comes out.
Yeah. I've done that, and I now that you have legitimized that, I think I'll get into it. So I was thinking something completely different. My favorite writers, there are two of them. One is the lady from India, Arundhati Roy. She won the Booker Prize for a book. It's called the God of Small Things, and of course we all know Samuel Selvon. So I was wondering if you could have dinner with an author, whether living or dead, who would it be? Who would you have dinner with? Why would you, and what would you talk to them about?
Well, I've heard so many stories about two famous musicians or writers that meet and they just sit there and say nothing. But anyway, to think about that, that's a hard question to answer, because during my lifetime of reading, different authors have meant different things to me at different points in my life. However, I would choose Sylvia Plath, the American poet who committed suicide in England in 1963, and Samuel Selvon, who relocated from Trinidad to England and then to, of all places, Calgary, Alberta. And I'm drawn to those two because of the experiences of living in a diaspora. How do you cope when you're all alone in a foreign country with not a lot of support, and you're a writer, And sometimes that doesn't pay well, that you could actually live on. I'm interested in those kinds of experiences. However, for a more realistic and closer to home approach, I think a couple of years ago I saw maybe Arity visited Trinidad, maybe Arlene was there, I'm not sure, Gershia, Randy. They all got together at Motilal's house, and Sabi cooked a big meal, and they were all sitting there at the table. And I thought, oh my God, I would love to have been there.
Yeah.
I just feel like I belong, and yeah. So to bring it closer to home, that's probably what I would choose at this moment.
Yeah.
If we could all be together in
Yeah.
person.
Yeah, I know. I was in Calgary when Samuel Selvin was there, and I saw him in the grocery store. I recognized him, and at that point, I was so enamored with this person walking the aisle, this Booker Prize winner. I was too embarrassed to go up and say, "Hey, I'm from Trinidad." I expect him to say, "So what happened for that?" So, so
And you know what? He probably would have appreciated if you did that.
yeah, but it's too bad because he as the story goes, he needed a few extra cents, so he got a job as a janitor in the university, and
Yeah.
the head of the English department was a doctor. I forgot his name, from Guyana, recognized him and told the university, "Look, we have this man here working as a janitor, this world famous writer." And overnight, literally overnight, he went from janitor to writer in residence in the University of Calgary. So finally, what you've written a wide-ranging set of works, and what would you hope our readers would take away from your writings?
Well, just to get a good sense of what makes me me. I think when we meet on Zoom and you don't really meet in person and you don't spend time together, opinions might be formed that aren't actually the real thing. So you make yourself known through what you write, perhaps. I think my loyalty to Trinidad, my commitment to preserving the history and the culture of Trinidad, and a sense of how Trinidadians cope living in the diaspora in a different culture that they don't really fit into, or they have to make themselves fit in. It's a stretch anyway. For me, it's been because I don't live in a big city where there are other people like me. So for me, it's been a little bit more of a challenge. I hope to convey the humor, but the nostalgia as well. If you could take that away, I think a lot of that is who I really am.
Yeah. Well, with that, I'm looking forward to hear some of the readings today. And, it's been a pleasure discussing your journey and the themes in your writing. And I look forward to seeing how your stories continue to evolve. And this conversation actually has given me a deeper appreciation of your work. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Frank.
And sharing your thoughts with us.
Well, always a pleasure for me to do that.
Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Canadians. You did
Yeah,
well.
Robert, God.
You did well. Frank, congratulations. As well, Heather, congratulations.
Thank you.
Wanna just before I invite others to make some comments if they wish. Oh, just about 4 things. One, Pekong. Pekong to me is, you asked Frank about Pekong, right? You know what is fatigue, Frank?
Yeah.
Well, to me, Pekong, I relate Pekong on the same level as fatigue. You say you throw Pekong at each other. It's like throwing fatigue at each other.
Yeah.
That's one. And Heather is correct to say that Melody and Sparrow did that in Calypso. Belmont Jacques, correct, Heather? Belmont Jacques. We call the other Belmont Jacques, something else. His wife was like a Belmont. I am from Belmont. I didn't take kindly to that. Anyhow, two, He mentioned your other books, because there's quite a number of books. I don't like the idea of making it sound like they just have two books, Circe's Dance and this one, because you have written quite a lot. And Frank asked the question, what are you doing with these other books? The pictorial book of your family, the Laltos, the Mulchansings, and the poems and so on. What is your intention? Perhaps you need to, I'm suggesting you need to get them on Amazon, get a couple, like the poems and the books. Heather?
Yeah, I would like to. I would like to. I'm kind of revisiting that idea now.
Yeah.
Both the Mulchansing book and the Laltu book, even though they're stories of the family, or a tracing of the family through history from indentureship to now.
Yeah.
It's also a journey through the history of Trinidad.
Right.
So I guess it's important for that reason. Also, my parents were very upwardly mobile for their generation. And a lot of the people that you might know today, Noor Hassan Ali, Zalaha Hassan Ali, his wife, those people, they were all like students of my dad and mom too.
Right.
So, they have more like an insight. I have more of an insight stories of those people, for example, so you've got the public figure, but then you've got some of the private stories behind. Jerry, who's here, is friends with Khalid Hassan Ali, their son. So and we all used to hang out in Port of Spain growing up as teenagers before we moved away to Canada. So there are all those little stories that we can really make a good story, a good tale out of.
Okay.
But and it's not just them, but they're just an example of people that my parents rubbed shoulders with. In my grandfather's diary, for example, he talks about the McShines, he talks about the Kelshaws, the Agostinis. These are all people he had business dealings with. But then these are all historical names of these families in Trinidad that have some historical context.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, now I'm seeing the value in perhaps publishing something like that on Amazon and getting a wider audience.
Yeah. The third thing I wanted to ask, an advertorial writer, what exactly that involves?
Oh, okay, and that's a good question actually. Because my publisher, when I talked about that, he says, well, in his view, publishing is just how should I say, advertising is just laying out pictures and text, and but it's as an advertorial writer, I would maybe work with a company that wants to have the history of the company. So that's, you write about that. And then they might want to feature all their services. So you have to write about what all the different services are. Then they might want to do something on their staff, each person, what his or her job is. And then you could have a 12-page spread with pictures and everything. So it's quite a bit more than just an ad in a paper.
Right. Okay. Thanks a lot for
Yeah.
that. And the fourth thing is, yeah, you talk about Sylvia Plath, Sam Selvon, but you hit the nail on the head when you said you don't mind coming to Moti's place and associating with the members of Poetry and Prose. So Moti, you could put Savi on alert there. Whenever Heather is here, invite her, and you could invite
Always.
the rest of us to come and associate with this writer, Heather Ferguson. Thank you so much, Frank and Heather. So we're going on to our readings now. And I see June is here. June, can you unmute so I can introduce you and you can read your piece? Gush, can you help? June, I'd like her to unmute so we could start. She's here.
Yeah, is it
Right.
unmuted now?
I'm hearing you.
Yeah, good.
I'm hearing. Good.
Now, my section deals with the lonely soldier.
Yeah. Well, let me just introduce you. I don't have much of an introduction because I really don't know you much. But June, in her quiet way, makes herself noticed. She's very soft-spoken, mild-mannered, and she has started making contributions through this Zoom platform. I try to Google June information on June, but I didn't get much. I did get that she's a very active member of the Methodist Church of Barbados, where she's known as Sister June. Is that correct, June? So
Yes.
June, right? So June, take it over, and you can introduce your piece and start to read.
Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
thanks for your complimentary remarks. The lonely soldier. November the 11th marks a commemoration of heroes from the Great World Wars. In Trinidad, as in many other countries whose sons and daughters sacrificed their youth for king and country, stories have come down from families who either had family members who served in the forces or who came in contact with the hundreds of service personnel from America and Britain who graced our shores in an effort to ward off the enemy. In my family, such a tale exists. Here now is that simple yet harrowing tale. During the Second World War, the Americans had bases in Central America. There were Waller Field in the north central part of the island and Carson Field near Freeport, both developed in the early 1940s to offset the presence of German U-boats in the Caribbean region. Developed by the US, these bases were a joint effort with Britain, with English servicemen in each location. During leave from Carlston Field, servicemen often visited the small village of Freeport to frequent local rum shops and mingle with the populace. Sometimes these men would stop by my uncle Hubert's garden to sample tropical fruit they were not familiar with, their favorite being kai mate, or stopping at the Mulchansing house to converse with my maternal grandfather, Ezekiel Munchansing, who, as a schoolmaster, was an avid reader and follower of events of the world stage. One evening in particular, Ezekiel spoke to a young serviceman who was in the village for a short respite before shipping out with his friends on an appointed mission. He left the Freeport house of my grandfather and ended up at a local rum shop. Here he became so intoxicated that he passed out, oblivious to the fact that his friends had moved on without him. When the shop closed up later in the evening, he was placed on the porch, as it was assumed his friends would come looking for him. As it turned out, no one came to claim him. They had gone on their other mission, leaving him behind. In the weeks following, the serviceman returned to my grandfather's house. He was again in a semi-drunken state. Here he told a chilling tale. All his friends who had gone on the mission, which should have included him, had perished on the beaches of Normandy. He alone survived because he had passed out in a drunken state on the floor of a rum shop in Freeport. As he put it, I would have had a bitch of a time at Normandy. Here is a poem I wrote to commemorate this war story, which came down in the annals of our family's oral history. It is a tribute to those servicemen who perished, as well as the lone survivor whose life fleetingly touched the lives of my family at Freeport. Yeah, from Freeport, from Freeport to Norma. A lone survivor treads the water's edge, remembering the friends he lost, their bodies bobbing on the ocean swells, blood seeping into sand at Normandy. They, fresh from a tropic reprieve at Charleston Field in Trinidad, called to duty in this arena of war, young men whose days before sampled the fare at Big Belly's Babula's rum shop, picked rich and creamy kermit in Uncle Hubert's yard, and exchanged stories on the veranda of an old man Malchansing's house at Freeport. At Freeport Junction, spirited away in the dead of night. Upon this tragic mission, whereby the hand of fate would dictate, due to his allegiance to Bacchus, a solitary one survived to tell the tale of a deadly opportunity missed, leaving him to mourn those whose lives lost that fateful day at Normandy. That, I believe, is the end of mine.
Thank you so much, June. Well, I dominated after the interview, so I will now open the floor to people who wanted to respond to the interview and to that piece that June read, The Unknown Soldier. Anybody who would like to come in? Whether on the interview or on this piece that June read. I am not seeing Altia. I am not seeing RT. So that is two readers I'm not seeing.
Well, Arity is also, I'll take her reading.
Oh, RT is ill. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. That's okay. Okay, Heather.
So I don't know about
Right. So, but if there's no comments, so Altia, well, let's hold back, Heather. We'll hold back.
yeah, we'll hold back that because that's
and
that story.
Vishnu,
Yeah.
and Vishnu also is not here. Vishnu, I'm not seeing Vishnu, right? So that is there. We could go to Cynthia then, right?
Okay. All
We
right.
could go to Cynthia. So let me give the introduction to Cynthia. You know, I have my introductions, right? Yeah, Ole asked me to do this job. Right. So Ole had to bear with me. Cynthia. This is Cynthia M. Birch, January 30th at 5:23 a.m. And this is what she posted. About 2 years ago, I was invited to join Poetry and Prose group, which meets fortnightly on Sunday afternoons. Although neither an aspiring author nor poet, I did join and I continue to attend. This morning, I realized that I should say a bit about this group, which has just celebrated 10 years of its existence. Members who are writing are producing amazing novels. Hear that? That's Cynthia. Stories and poems, and are making a significant contribution to our already noteworthy body of local and Caribbean literature. And so, Heather, you fall in line there, right? So it is well worth taking notice of this group of writers. See Poetry and Prose right here on Facebook. There are recordings of past programs available too. And should you wish to join a session, kindly log in with your full name. I feel Cynthia deserves a standing ovation for that promotion of Poetry and Prose. Cynthia, all yours. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for that writer. Lovely.
Thank you very much, Krishna, because when we were listening to some of the background of Heather's stories, I realized, well, I should put something on Facebook. It just came to me and I just wrote that comment because it is true. All these writers, your group included, the others who have written before, and then some who are coming up, it's really an impressive body. So you're very welcome. Right, the piece that I've been allocated is The White Lady and the Steel Band Man by Heather Laltu Ferguson. Debbie stretched her naked body, shifting in bed. What a restless night she had had. The heat was stifling, the humidity like a solid wall. She had slept on the fitted sheet, no cover, and the fan trained on her brought little relief. This was the tropics. A recent newcomer to Trinidad from her home in small town rural Canada, she had been so excited for her trip to Trinidad. A tropical island brought thoughts of a perpetual resort. She had no idea how people lived there, and neither did she care. For her, the locals were either servants or cleaners, like she had always seen in advertisements for tropical resorts on television, with blacks serving whites, always in a subservient role. What a surprise it had been to know that the island had a 90% literacy rate and had given many worthy people and ideas to the world. Debbie had grown up in an all-white world where she was taught to distrust dark people. She was taught that they were inferior to whites, were criminals, and were lazy. She believed what she grew up hearing. On her first trip to Western Canada, she remarked, "Once you go west of Quebec City, you don't think you're in Canada anymore," referring to the various ethnicities that now comprised the country. There was no one to say to her, "Hello, you're a part of the world, and the world is not all white." And more importantly, when was Canada ever all white? Debbie's statement disregarded the indigenous peoples, revealing how ignorant Debbie was of the history of the very country from which she hailed. She displayed the typical white privilege attitude, the tendency to discount entire peoples and their history. Debbie had come to Trinidad with her husband Colin. He was temporarily recruited by the government of the island to oversee a job in his capacity as an engineer. And using Trinidad as a base, he would be leaving Debbie alone much of the time as he traveled to neighboring islands that were also a part of the project. The couple was put up in a luxurious open-plan furnished house in a posh area of Port of Spain, surrounded by lush gardens, tropical palms, a pool, and all the amenities for a high-class lifestyle. They were even provided with a live-in housekeeper/maid, Geneva, and a chauffeur/yard boy, Kendrick, in a compound protected from intruders by a huge wrought iron fence that was perpetually locked. They lived here like lords. This was a life they could never have afforded back in the small maritime community in which they had formerly lived. Confronted with a forward-looking, multicultural and multiracial people who prided themselves on education, progress, and self-actualization, this was a country that upset all the preconceived notions Debbie and Colin had about the Caribbean. Why, unbeknownst to them, Geneva was a retired policewoman who was housekeeping as a favor to the original house owner, who was a friend who needed someone trustworthy on the premises. And Kendrick the watchman, was a part-time university instructor who was also a steel pan man and was moonlighting as a yard boy to earn money for further studies in his field. This was to be a learning process for both Debbie and Colin, but only if they were open to the possibilities that were presented to them. While Colin had the opportunity to go out and work among the ordinary people, Debbie lived in an insular world with little chance of interaction with the locals, and any attempt to socialize at the whites-only country club gave no chance to meet locals of color outside of their roles there of servants and providers, and only served to annoy the much younger Debbie, who met up with older expats from England who looked down on her youth, skimpy clothing, and strange Canadian ways and notions, passing judgment on her appearance and perceived lack of manners. Unfortunately, Debbie was left to her own devices for much of the time, and she felt imprisoned in her luxury quarters, even though every need was met by the long-suffering, huge-girthed maid Geneva, who constantly muttered to herself in the local dialect that Debbie could not, thank God, understand, as very often it was pointed towards Debbie's unconventional habits. Madam may have no shame, she would say when she saw Debbie walking around the house stark naked, trying to deal with the heat. Me, I know where these people come from, no? She muttered under her breath. But in Trinidad we just wear clothes. We ain't monkey in the tree one time. That's the end of my segment.
Okay, thank you,
You're
Cynthia,
welcome.
for that. So she beating the heat. All right. Any responses?
You know, that character, Debbie,
Yes.
that character, Debbie, she described very succinctly. I know, and I've seen characters like that, people who thought that way. Very early on in the early 60s, I was on a bus traveling between Montreal and Saskatchewan, and it's 3 nights and 3 days travel. And this guy beside me, poor guy, you know, he was quite genuine, asked if we had houses in Trinidad. And in my young cocky self, I said, yeah, no, we swing on vines. In fact, one of the people we have in Trinidad who won a Nobel Prize in mathematics and physics, he would swing on a vine to get to his office every morning. And the guy believed all that, you know. So I can see that character. It was well described.
Thank you, Ram, for your comment. Yes. Who is that?
Yeah, interestingly, Alicia here. Interestingly,
Alicia. Okay, yes.
yes.
Welcome, Alicia.
Yeah, thank you. Happy New Year, folks. I haven't been on for a bit.
Well, yeah, thank you. Happy New Year
Yeah,
to you.
there are persons who still, to some extent, think that our country is quite backward and that there are so many things that we do not have. And even though they may have moved away from the swinging on the vine idea, they think that we don't have internet and we don't have, you know, a lot of things. So, and you would have heard some years ago, not too long ago, I think there was one issue with some entertainer that came here and had that impression of Trinidad and Tobago, you know, of it being an island that was quite backward and there wasn't phones and running water and that kind of thing. So in some aspects, things have not really changed that much as to how they view, you know, islands in the Caribbean and persons in the Caribbean as not being developed.
Well, you know, the rest of the story, she meets a steelman man who's going to beat that right out of her.
Oh,
Okay.
my word.
Thank you, Alicia, for your comments. I see Altia.
Altia is here now.
I see Altia is here. Altia, can you unmute? Let me just introduce you, and you will read your piece. Parvati comes into her own.
So,
Althea.
are we
Althea,
starting earlier than normal?
actually, we started at 1. Maybe, Althea,
Oh,
maybe you had your
okay.
time.
I thought,
Your
okay,
time.
I know we're 6 hours ahead. Did we change?
Mm,
Was there a time change?
we started at 1. I don't know about the time change in your
Yeah,
in
one, and
your zone.
I'm 6 hours ahead.
Uh-huh.
So
But
have you been,
mm,
are you just starting or have you been on for an hour
on for an
already?
hour, on for an hour
Oh,
almost.
oh my Lord.
But don't worry, don't worry. We waited on you. So I
Okay,
just want to introduce you, and you will read your piece, right? So
okay.
Althea is our Switzerland connection with an international reputation as a lecturer and writer. Um, Her works are heavily anthologized in regional and international publications. As you hear her, she is very deliberate in the articulation of whatever she has to say or read. She strikes me as someone who is never rushed. Even today, when she thinks, she's late, she's never rushed. Many of the photos she posts of where she's staying looks like picture perfect postcards. And it is with envy that of that landscape that I register my Facebook like when she posts these things. So Althea, you can take over now. Parvati comes into her own. Althea,
Yeah.
all yours.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, good. Pabuti comes into her own. Pabuti was, as they say in Trinidad, thin for spite or maga in Trini vernacular. As a child, she was unaware of this fact, using her slight frame to do all the boyish things girls were not supposed to do. Often, neighborhood boys would shout to her during her arboreal exploits. What you doing up there in that mango tree? You don't know girl climbing tree does make mango sour? What a load of shit, she thought, climbing even higher. They, they're just saying that to get all the mango for themselves. Paputi always had a rebellious streak. Mamu, Pabuti mother was always trying to fatten her up. You're not leaving that table until all the food gone, she would threaten Pabuti daily. Mealtime became a regular battle of will for Pabuti and Mamu. Girl, you're so mager. Who go want you? That was a real concern for Mamu, who hoped to marry Pabuti off to a good boy as soon as she showed signs of first moon. The quicker I get Pabuti married off, the better, so she could start making baby, provide me with a set of grandchildren to fetch and carry for me, she told neighbors. That was Mamu's sole concern in life. Mamu was so desperate for Pabuti to fill out that she put her on a powder supplement called Wait On. The taste was chemical and chalky, so Pabuti spit it out every chance she got when Mamu turned her back. The supplement had no effect. Pabuti stayed thin. Pabuti had other plans. She did not want to marry at puberty the way most Indian girls of her social standing did. She wanted to go to high school and become a teacher. When she was not climbing trees and showing up the boys, she could be found under her bed reading any book she could put her hands on. Once, when Mamu caught her reading, she said, "I know why you're reading all them book. Them writers smart, and you is just a stupid girl." Mamu lost no opportunity to put Pabuti in what she considered her place. As puberty approached, Booty became body conscious, especially as the more buxom girls in school got all the attention from the village boys. Flat as a board, the girls mocked her lack of curves. Pabs, they called out on the playground. "You just sit on your back?" "What you mean?" Pabuti asked. Well, you ain't have any bamsy, and they would all dissolve in gales of laughter. Once Pabuti saw her more curvaceous classmate Gemma behind the tree with a local Saga boy. He had one hand down her blouse, the other up her skirt. Gemma had a look of pure bliss on her face. Gemma was one of the girls who mocked her incessantly. It was not fair she was getting all the attention from the boys. Pabuti felt she was outside that special circle of popular girls. Before long, however, Gemma got pregnant and dropped out of school, and the Saga boy abandoned her to boot. Pabuti hid her insecurities in her schoolwork and put her focus on lessons. A bright girl, she sailed through elementary school, getting a scholarship for the high school of her choice. She persuaded her mother to let her go on to further education by pointing out the benefits of procuring an educated boy to match her elevated intellectual status. "I don't want any grass knife laborer," she said. "Then we go poor forever. I go aim higher for a man with an office job." That quelled Mamu's ambition for a while, especially as it was her intention for Pabuti to look after her in old age, and they would need plenty of money for that. High school was a breeze for Pabuti. She flew right through it, getting a government scholarship to go overseas to university. She jumped at the chance, anything to get away from her nagging mother and to broaden her horizons. Mamu was already looking for a husband for her among the male high school graduate population, and she had a few prospects lined up in Pinal and Siparia. Pabuti put a complete stop to Mamu's plans when she announced she was going to New York to attend university. "I'm not interested in any husband now," she said. "Boys in Trinidad too chauvinistic. Mamu looked askance at her with the famous Trini cut eye. It's so you licking me down with big words and ting? Don't forget you just a little peep squeak. That was the very treatment Pabuti was trying to escape from. One day, as she looked in at the local shop for last-minute toiletries for her epic trip abroad, Pabuti heard a familiar voice with that mocking tone she knew so well. Oh, I hear you're going foreign, the voice said with a sneer. She turned around to see Gemma. She turned around to see Gemma, her old school adversary, fat, ungainly, pregnant, with a string band of children behind her, all from different fathers. Yes, I'm going to Piaro to fly to New York tomorrow, she said, quickly turning away, realizing she and Gemma now belonged to two different worlds.
That's it,
So
Altia.
yeah, that's
Thank you.
that's my bit.
Thank you so much. Anybody would like to come in? As a hot story. So it started hot. I'd like to welcome, I see Arlene, Kamta, I saw Kamta, yes, Kamta, Diana, and there are a
Tammy.
couple others, Tammy and Denise. So welcome all of you to this session. Heather, you have quite a following.
That's good to know.
Yeah, nice. Very good.
I'm just wondering if we should move on to Motilal because
Yes, we can. We can.
the
I'm
time
watching
is
it.
going on. Yeah.
I'm watching the time and I know you're getting anxious too. All right. I hope your stories read.
Yeah.
So we'll go to Moti. Moti is the man of the Kahani series. Poetry and prose is Gosha and Moti, or Moti and Gosha. As simple as that. He's a live wire in the group who, when others might be less inclined to make a comment on a reading, you could depend on Moti to initiate some form of discussion, beginning with a line like, that reminds me of when I was growing up, and he would make a connection between what was read and how it resonated somehow with him. Moti is going to read King for a Day, Part 1. Moti, all yours.
Thank you, Chris. I was just wondering if this when she was looking for these high school graduates for Parvati, I wonder if she was thinking about me. Okay, here goes. Are you hearing me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, King for a Day. Leroy James and Hillman de Salinas were friends from childhood. They grew up together, went to the same school, and lived in the same street in San Fernando in the mid-1950s. Hillman, named after his father's first car, the British-made Hillman Minx, was the leader, and Leroy, his faithful sidekick. They first met in primary school when Leroy inquired, "How you name Hillman? I never heard that name before." "Daddy named me after the first car he get," said Hillman. "What about Dessalines? Where that come from?" Leroy asked. "Salt of the earth, that's me," Hillman replied. Boy, it's a good thing my father did not name me Armitage after the first new thing we get, a flush toilet in the house instead of the latrine outside, countered Leroy. Hillman laughed. The humor of that exchange cemented their friendship from then on. Together, the boys played cricket in the street, pitched marbles in the schoolyard, and played a little pan in Hillman's father's barnyard. They had an idyllic childhood of shared interests. As they grew into teenagers, their passion, however, was playing mass. Carnival each year. This was a passion which was ignited from the time they first appeared as zombies on Juve morning in the year 1965, when they were still youngsters. From that time on, as soon as Carnival was over, they busied themselves to come up with the ideas and costume designs for the next Carnival. Excelling in history at Naparima College, they used their knowledge of different historical eras to design costumes for a range of bands depicting Imperial Rome, the wild American West, ancient Egypt, and so on. These they showed to local band leader Alvin Saladin, who regularly made use of them. In young adulthood, after graduating from school, the boys successfully gained employment in the local government, married their high school sweethearts, and began their own families. Hillman married Teresa from Park Street near Skinner Park, and Leroy married Gemma from Moody Street in Monrepo. Not the type of men to fret and line their time away. They spent every spare moment on their passion for carnival, going on to form their own carnival band, continued to design costumes in the specific themes each year. They went to the cinema regularly to see epic Hollywood films like The Ten Commandments, Ben-Hur, and Cleopatra, paying close attention to the pageantry and costumery to copy for their own carnival portrayals. While Hillman was the historical researcher, Leroy became the designer, producing costumes that could match Hollywood's finery any day. Hillman always cast himself in the lead. If they were depicting local folklore, Hillman was Papa Bois and Leroy his helper. If the team was a sailor band, Hillman was the admiral with fancy epaulettes and brass buttons, and Leroy was just a common sailor, and so on. Leroy did not seem to mind. He was easygoing and never complained. He just enjoyed riding the rhythm of the steel band music and the chaotic atmosphere of the crowds as he wound his way through the streets of San Fernando on carnival days. Half a century of carnivals passed, and the boys, now retired seniors, still enjoyed the lure of carnival and the jump up in the street. On their shelves at home were an impressive collection of awards they had won for Band of the Year, Carnival King and Queen costumes, and general design of the supportive players in any given team. They had made a name for themselves. People look forward to the now famous Jones de Salinas band every year. Well into their 70s, they were still avid participants in Carnival. This year, they chose the theme of the Aztec nation. Elaborate headdresses, silken capes, gold armbands, and sandals were all the order of the day. Hillman gave himself the role of King of the Aztecs, casting Leroy as the king's bearer, holding a huge palm leaf to fan the king. This was yet another secondary role in a lifetime of playing second fiddle. Leroy grew to resent this position over the years, but never made a fuss until his wife said in front of Hillman one day, "How come Hillman is king again? Are you not taking turns? Man, I'm tired of you always in second place." Hillman looked surprised, and Leroy looked embarrassed. "How you could show me up so?" Leroy asked his wife later. Carnival Monday dawned. The band took formation on Coffee Street, ready to march down Harris Promenade to Independence Road towards the King's Wharf and then turn around a circle street back up High Street to return to the coffee. Hillman was at the head of the band, with Leroy fanning him. All Stars Steel Band was at the rear, driving rhythm with bass bands, laying down their beat with their boom, 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 ba-doom, tenor and soprano bands, layering the sound with the melody and repeating ting, ting, ting-a-ling, ting-a-ling, and the piccolo band with their ping, 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 added by the bottle and spoon, tire iron and stick, the panic section echoing the rhythm. The march was sweet, sweet. The crowds on the road were caught up in the rising tempo, bodies glistening with sweat, gyrating in time to the music. A sea of people like a tsunami engulfing the city. The sun was hot, hot. The heat was stifling. Leroy noticed Hillman was quiet. He was not his jovial self. Leroy at first thought Hillman was vexed with him for his wife's outburst, or maybe stunned at the realization that Leroy felt he had been shortchanged all these years. Later on, Leroy saw that Hillman was struggling physically. He was sweating profusely, seemingly overtired, and moved awkwardly. As soon as the band reached King's Wharf, where they were going, Hillman left. He did not finish the rest of the route back to Coffee Street. Okay, I'll stop there. Thank you, Heather, for giving me the opportunity to read this. I am a South boy. I'm Pinal, and I know all these streets. I went to school in San Fernando. Push pan all about in Sando. One of the biggest, hardest job in Carnival. In those days, we used to have the steel band on the ground and we used to push pan. And San Fernando is one of the hilliest city, the city with the most hills. So thank you. It certainly brought back memories for me of my little time in San Fernando Carnival. And it also gave me a warning that now that I am in my 70s,
Don't
I
do
have
it
to take
again.
it easy. I can't play mass again. Thank you.
All right.
Well,
Thank you.
Krishna is
Yeah.
going to read the part 2 to
Thank
this
you,
story.
Moti. Yes, yes. Thanks, Heather. Well, about Krishna, I could talk about Krishna for hours, but I'll hold back on that. So yes, if I didn't have to read this King for a Day, I would have given way to others to read. But as it's a continuation of that story, I have to do my bit. King for a Day Part 2. So 5 o'clock in the morning, Hillman called Leroy on the phone. "I ain't feeling good today, boy. I cannot go Port of Spain. Pass by me and get the Aztec king costume to wear, as the band can't go to competition without the king. You have to wear it. Give one of the other fellas your costume to wear." Leroy was surprised. "Oh God, look how my dreams straight," he whispered. Still, he thought Hillman was making an excuse to give him the lead as king on purpose in response to his wife Gemma's outburst. You see the comments he opened up now? Leroy quarreled with his wife. By 7 a.m., they were in Port of Spain, assembling in Savannah. By the time they had marched across the stage a few hours later, they had won Band of the Year. They well mashed up the competition. Around 4 p.m., they headed down St. Vincent Street toward Green Corner, jumping up joyously and making a slow progress, inching along in time to the rhythms of Kitsch's Road March. Leroy was in his element. King at last, he carried the robes regally, posing this way and that, swinging the bejeweled cape dramatically to and fro. He wore the Aztec headdress he himself designed, his aquiline jaw giving an authentic version of an Aztec warrior king. Various bands converged onto the same streets, with some marking time on the spot to allow others to pass. A common courtesy prevailed, not like long ago when bitter rivalries erupted in the streets at carnival time, but all around them, the ghosts of past triumphs and conflicts hovered over the streets of the city, dancing alongside the living. Echoes of the epic events, like the steel band clash between Tokyo and Invader bands of the 1940s, still resonated in the lines of the now famous Lord Blakey Calypso. Well, you know it? It was a bacchanal, 50 carnival, fight for soul with invaders and Tokyo. And friends, when the steel band clash, mama yo, if you see got lash, never me again to jump in a steel band in Port of Spain. Yes. More distant memories of the career criminal, the Bajan Mastiff, who stalked his rival Cotauta through the streets of Port of Spain, using Carnival as its cover to annihilate his nemesis, had faded. But in a more obscure calypso called Carnival Celebration by Grenadian-born Theophilus Woods, also known as Small Island Pride, the event was recorded for posterity. I have a faint thing about it. I know it will, Mastiff, Mastiff, meet me down by the Quazy and Kautota, meet me down by Green Corner. Yeah, right. So both calypsos have references to the famous Green Corner in Port of Spain, the very place Aztec nation had temporarily come to a standstill. What went on there in that spot in the past was long forgotten by the revelers of today as they twisted and whined to the compelling sounds of steel. Leroy fused with the rhythm, becoming a personification of the music itself, which flowed through him. Looking at him, one did not know where the music stopped and he began. He was at one with the steel pan, the beat lining up with his own heartbeat, coursing through his body like his lifeblood. It was so physical an experience, it became spiritual. Time stood still and raced by at the same time. Perceptions bent and changed. Leroy felt lightheaded. By the time the band reached Independence Square, it was dusk. Mass players dispersed. Some collapsed from sheer fatigue, lolling around on the ground. Others went to find food and drink and ready themselves for a night of further revelry. Leroy plunked himself on a bench, exhausted. Darkness descended. It was then Leroy looked up in a haze. He thought he saw Hillman on a path walking away from him. He shouted, "Hillman, it's you? You come up to join us after all, like you're feeling better?" Leroy shook his head, which felt foggy. Hillman did not answer him or look at him. He just kept walking, looking straight ahead. Leroy jumped up and walked beside him. "You're still vexed?" he inquired. Then he paused and looked back. There he saw himself still on the bench. He was confused. "Oh God, what happened, man?" he whispered as it all faded to black. Next morning, cleaners sweeping debris from the square found Leroy dead on the bench. Later, friends found out that Hillman had died around 6 p.m. in San Fernando, the very time Leroy was presumed to have died in Port of Spain. It seems these two longtime friends had arranged their last band. Then they joined up on the path on Independence Square and walked on together towards the hill of Laventille in their own final last lap. Right, so that continues the story, completes the story of King for a Day. Thank you. Responses? Anybody wants to interject? Heather, so we should go on to Leslie Ann Beckles.
Can I just say something? I'm sorry. I love
Yes.
the story, and Heather,
Or Arlene.
I'm sorry. Wait. Are you hearing me? Sorry.
Go
Yes,
ahead,
yes.
Arlene. Go ahead,
Heather,
Arlene.
I'm loving all of your stories, right? I mean, first of all, I just wanted to comment first on the interview, because I thought it was really a wonderful interview. I mean, Frank asked some really pertinent questions. And I mean, what I loved also was just hearing the process of your journey as a writer, you know, and especially one who is living away from Trinidad, where your work is so very much rooted in culture and these characters bring to life. But I mean, it's just this last story was just really wonderful. I mean, in terms of just how you intertwine the relationship between these two men and Carnival, and at the end there's this, it's almost, you know, surrealistic. I mean, it's
Correct.
of these two people, you know what I mean, of these two people that come together and has made some sort of pact. So I just want to say I'm enjoying it. Thank you so much, Heather. Thanks.
Thank you, Arlene.
Thank you, Arlene, for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Jerry here, just one, if I could just.
Yes, Jerry. Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, you made mention of Green Corner.
Yes.
Yeah, Green Corner is considered like the heart of Port of Spain because it was where Tragreet Road began. Arpita Avenue turned into Park Street, and then going down, I think was Richmond Street, and then there was Roxy Cinema, not Roxy,
Globe.
was there.
Globe.
Globe, yeah. So
Globe.
let me just fix this thing a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was an important taxi stand because from there you could get a taxi going to Carnage or Digger Martin. So from school, I went to Tranquility. Sorry. And from school, I'd walk to Green Corner and take my taxi to what you call it, to the the Digger Mountain taxi, which would take me to Glencoe where I lived. And I just remembered one night, a friend and I, we went to a late show, and these shows started at 11:30. It was a horror, Dracula, Prince of Darkness, and the horror of Dracula. So we were both pretty much freaked out. And when the show finished about 3:30 in the morning, we walked across the Green Corner, which was very deserted, and we waited quite a long time for a taxi. And then we saw a taxi come, and my friend walked over and spoke to the driver. And then the driver went off. He left the driver. So I came back and what happened was that sorry, I needed a Carnage taxi. And so I said, so what happened? That was a Digger Mountain taxi. So he said, no, it was a Carnage taxi. So well, why didn't you take the taxi? He said, well, I didn't like the tapes the guy had. So I just thought I'd spread that story.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Let me introduce now Leslie Ann. I want to introduce as well Natasha. They will follow each other. Leslie Ann paired off with Natasha. It's always a pleasure to have these two vibrant young ladies entertain us with their dramatic renditions of whatever they are called upon to read. Douglas Essence is her handle, and it sparkles with the dimples on her face with truth. Natasha will follow Leslie Ann. Okay? So take it away, Leslie Ann.
Good afternoon, everyone. Midnight Adventures. Midnight Dolly was a saga boy extraordinaire. When he moved into the neighborhood, women noticed him. He was well endowed physically, a dapper dresser, and had unusual blue eyes, a novel trait in a man of Trinidadian ancestry. The son of an ethnically mixed lady of questionable origin and a white man of French extraction. This mongrel rogue was the perfect specimen of manhood. Midnight Dolly was his nickname bestowed upon him in that ironic twist of humor that was typically Trinidadian, as he was unusually light-skinned, and he was bright too. Having excelled at school, he was rumored to have a good job as an engineer in the electrical field. He was assumed to be making good money, and he drove the latest American Buick in a two-tone blue to match his eyes. Having just moved to a house in Woodbrook, Mr. Dolly, as neighbors referred to him, could often be seen on weekends, working in his yard, stripped to the waist. He kept a neat landscape, mowing lawns, banking up flower beds, and showing off his handsome physique. Women in the neighborhood befriended him, offering advice on how to grow the best orchids or trim the poinsettia bush to encourage optimum blooms during the flowering season. He had a little boy's appearance of innocence that brought out the mothering instincts in women of all ages, although he was a good 32 years old. Soon the neighborhood women were showing up at his door with a coconut pie, roti, and curry goat or pot of pilau to make him feel welcome to their small urban enclave. "Good morning, Mr. Dolly," they would say, anxious to acknowledge this handsome stranger to their midst and get to know all about him. "And notice you didn't have a lady to look out for you," a mature 55-year-old matron, Miss Veronica, said one afternoon as she called in on Midnight Dolly, Callaloo in hand. "So I'll bring some of my food for you." Midnight graciously accepted the food. "Thanks so much," he stammered in some embarrassment, looking more like a small boy than a grown man. It was that air of vulnerability that endeared him to women in particular. They all felt an urge to comfort and protect him like a child. And he knew this too, capitalizing on it in getting small favors. Just his thanks was enough to satisfy women, all of whom seemed to swoon in the presence of his piercing blue eyes with their hypnotic gaze. When he trained that look on them, it was as if he could see into their very souls. They all felt like confessing their deepest, darkest secrets to him. Men liked him too, but kept their distance, as Midnight did not seem to like the regular cutlass-wielding type of man who enjoyed carousing with the fellows. He was more cerebral and aloof. The result was that while men reacted to him with politeness, he was not considered to be part of the neighborhood gang meeting up Friday nights by the local rum shop, ogling girls walking by and shaking their hips to the men. For the local men, Midnight was a mystery nobody wanted to unravel. Many men thought he was of a different ilk, more the type who, while befriending women, actually preferred men. I bet he is the Batman type," some said, and others nodded in agreement. The men often made fun of Mr. Dolly in the rum shop, while they jokingly referred to him as Mr. Dollyman. Midnight did not care. He had enough attention from the women, who increasingly beat a path to his door with small treats, fruit, and whole meals for him to sample. "That poor child looking so scrawny one time," said Miss Veronica. "Let me feed him so he could put on some size," she would tell the neighborhood ladies. As a polite response to the women feeding him, Midnight often fixed their broken appliances free of charge. Handy with a toolbox, he could fix anything. When Mrs. Singh's sewing shop broke, he had it up and running in no time, saving her both the expense and time it would take to get a professional repairman to fix it. In this way, he also fixed washers, dryers, fridges, stoves, toilets, sinks, and more, saving the women and their families precious dollars. In a sneaky way, this familiarity with the neighborhood women offered him the opportunity to enter their homes in the absence of their husband and children, ascertain their living circumstances, and offer them advice on all aspects of their lives. Thank you. Thank you much.
Thank you, Douglas Essence. Natasha, you ready? Where's Natasha? Douglas? Leslie Ann, are you seeing Natasha? She was there? I'm not seeing her.
Oh yeah, I'm not seeing her either.
Not seeing Natasha. She was there. Okay, well, I could get back to her if she comes back. Let us move to Jerry. Jerry, we highlighted Jerry a while ago with his book, Boy Days, and it is good to see him taking up the offer to join us in our fortnight sessions. We welcome him and hope to see more of him as the year rolls on. Jerry, all yours. Jerry practicing. Jerry, you're practicing. I'm not hearing you.
Maybe he doesn't have his mute off.
No, he's not muted.
His
Yes.
mouse is moving.
Yeah. So like he's reading. Jerry. Gush. If you're there, see if you could help. Because like Jerry reading now.
I'm here. Hi guys.
Oh, Natasha is here?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think Jerry's practicing. So let's go on to Natasha.
Yeah.
I
You hear me clearly?
Natasha is paired off with Leslie Ann. Where you see Leslie Ann, you find Natasha. And these
Okay.
two are taking the Natasha.
Hello. Are you hear me clearly?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, lovely.
Okay.
All right. So I've got
Natasha, I was introducing you. Yeah, I say, where you find Natasha, you'll find Leslie Ann. And these two ladies are taking the initiative of spreading the word of literature on public stages. Natasha, you can go ahead now with your piece.
Thank you. Alonzo's Adventures in Wonderland. Alonzo puffed up his hair on top of his forehead, letting some hang suggestively over one eye. Turn up his collar so it looked rude, and spray a little Old Spice all over before looking admiringly at himself in the mirror. Pleased with what he see, he called out to Ma, "I'm going to come back." And he was out the door in a flash. He was heading to his usual spot by the lamppost to line with the boys, catch up on the day's non-events, and look out for girls. Smart man, saga boy, and potential sweet man, Alonzo was always looking for the next young thing to take up with. Your rum shop open, his friend Dexter said. Alonzo looked down at his fly. He was in such a hurry to lime he did not check himself properly. He pulled up his zipper trying to save face. "I'm ready for them gills," joked Alonzo. "You real stupid man," his friend Dexter said. "You only looking for young thing who inexperienced in the ways of the world. When you get them making baby, well, is then you in trouble. Take it from me, you need an older, more experienced woman with money who could rev up the batteries good and provide you with the finer things in life. She have everything already and she are looking for husband who could take with she independence. She just want a young, muscular, hot body to make her feel sweet, especially if she hard up for a ride. And as she done pass she moon's baby making days, you looking in the wrong place, man. Where I go find out Oloman? Alonzo wanted to know. "Man, they all around," said Dexter. "You just have to look. I go hook you up with a lady I know wrong St. Clair. She husband just dead a few months back. And she asked my auntie if she knew anybody who could drive she car to do errands for she. The husband used to drive she everywhere and she never learned to drive herself." "She can't take taxi?" Alonzo asked. "No," said Dexter. "She feels she too good for taxi. She don't like public transportation where everybody dirty backside does sit on. And she have the car in the garage there doing nothing." It sounded good to Alonzo. He knew how to drive as his last job was as a driver for a company before it went bankrupt. "Hook me up," he said. "But a fix." Alonzo was more pleased at the opportunity of making a few dollars than of any prospects of having an affair in the offing, as older women did not appeal to him. And Ma would be happy as he was not going idle, but employed in a real job. Alonzo was a smart boy in school, graduating with honors, but he had no money for higher education. His uncle in the foreign offered to sponsor him and had a job waiting for him that would pay for university. But Alonzo, still young at just 20 and full of oats, did not want to leave home yet. Life was too easy with Ma looking after him. But he needed a diversion to occupy his time and to get Ma off of his back with her always nagging at him to get a job. Meet me tomorrow lunchtime by QRC and I will carry you by the lady house, said Dexter. But how you not interested in the job yourself? Alonzo asked. Man, I have my hands full with my own old lady. I could hardly come up for air. She want me doing for she morning, noon, and night. I just have to plead time out to see my own mother to even get a chance to line with the boys, Dexter said. But your mother dead, exclaimed Alonzo. Exactly. I had to resurrect she as an excuse for time off, said Dexter laughingly. Next noon hour, Alonzo met up with Dexter by the QRC roundabout. They walked up the avenue and turned into the area behind the college, where all the old-fashioned, stately houses are. Dexter walked up to a huge green metal gate and rang the bell on the post. A few minutes later, an old Negro maid come out and asked, "Who there? What you want?" Dexter gave his name and business and she let him in. It was a paradise, right there in the middle of Port of Spain. Lush cultured gardens swept right up to a huge Victorian-style mansion with a deep set wraparound veranda. The maid motioned for them to sit down and went to let the madam know 2 men were there to see her. Alonzo looked around amazed. You mean it have people living high life so in Trinidad? He asked Dexter. Yeah, man. And you could have a piece of this if you play your cards good. Just then the lady of the house appeared. She was in her late 40s, attractive with an ample, shapely figure oozing out of a tight dress. She was a local woman mixed with white and maybe Spanish. She could pass entirely for white with her fair complexion and dyed blonde hair. Somehow she had snagged an old rich white man and married into money. Well made up and coiffed, she had luscious lips and a wide smile. Well, hello, boys, she said. Which one of you is ready to come work for me? Alonzo stood up from his chair and put his hand up. Is me, madam, he said with a broad smile hiding his nervousness. Come this way and see the car I want you to drive, madam said, and motioned them towards the garage. There sat a classic 1964 Chevrolet in all its glory. You in charge of the upkeep of the vehicle and of driving me to and from appointments, she told Alonzo. Can you start today? I will show you your living quarters. Alonzo felt like he won the lottery. The room was nice and a small bed looked more comfortable than the one that he had back home. He moved in right away. He bid a fond farewell to Dexter, who winked at him suggestively in taking his leave. I given you a week to score with she, he whispered to Alonzo, who accepted the challenge willingly. Report to me on your next day off, Dexter said as he slunk away, leaving Alonzo at the mercy of the madam. And that was Alonzo's adventures. And I could see the pickle and pepper sauce coming through right there. Thank you, Heather, for writing an awesome book and for allowing me to read it.
Thank you, Natasha. Always well read, Gil. There's so much drama in that.
Yes. Now we go to Jerry. Jerry?
Hello,
You ready?
hi.
You
Yeah.
ready for us? Right. Okay. So you can come on now.
Jerry, read the whole story and I have time.
No, I haven't printed out here. It's okay.
But you have the book.
Heather, but we'd like to hear you read, Heather. Remember, you're supposed to read.
Oh, well, I will read the rest of Jerry one then.
Okay,
Okay, so Rishi gone foreign.
right.
The whole way from Trinidad on the plane, Rishi feeling like a big man. Man are going foreign. He kept mantra in his head. He was so excited. He had on his best shirt with the collar up, pants creased so sharp it could cut you, brill cream puff up his hair just so. He was so cool, he even imagined the stewardess and them casting glances at his male handsomeness. Rishi was used to being worshipped by the opposite sex in Trinidad. Women came off to do woodwork to admire him. When he walked down the street in Curep, with that studied hop and drop gait, flickering imaginary flies off his shoulders, he could see them panting with excitement. Doubles by Miss Annie Stan, even she giving him discount. Here, child, she would say, eat out something to keep that sexiness going. It must be hard work to look so good every day. Rishi belonged to a nice line of a few fellas, but things changed when his best partner, Roderick, gone foreign. Almost every week, Roderick texted him to come up to Canada, where he gone. It was a constant barrage of, man, I'll go find a job for you. They need more workers in the plant I working in, and the money good. Look, I done sponsor you. She was tempted. Well, he finally gave in to temptation and landed up on the plane with a ticket financed by granny money. Here, boy, she said, it's a good thing you're going to find good work to send money by we. You know your mother and me ain't getting any younger, and we need help now. All this responsibility was the furthest thing from Richie's mind, however. All he could think of was landing a white woman. Sparrow's words from the famous Calypso Congo man echo in his mind, namely, I never eat a white meat. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Rishi landed in Pearson International Airport in Toronto. First thing, the strong wind blowing messed up his carefully coiffed hair coming down the ramp and walking across the tarmac. And the fancy hop and drop wine had to give way to a quick step with a plane load of people pressing down on him from behind. Then customs was tedious. Rishi did not see any white women to smile at, since all airport workers were brown like him. What is this? Rishi said. You sure I in Canada? Roderick meet him in the visitors' lounge. Partner, come let me get a drink somewhere. Tomorrow we go look for work. It have a janitor job going by where I work in. It's a good entry position. What? You mean I come quite from Trinidad to do janitor work? Granny and Mommy always... I know nothing about that. Don't worry, you go pick it up quick, Roderick said. You must get responsible now, man. We cannot lime we whole life away. Why not? Rishi moaned. Life was already not turning out the way he imagined it would be in foreign. Roderick carried him by a rooming house where he found him a room. It was a single bedroom with a bathroom down the hall he shared with other tenants. There was no kitchen or laundry facilities on site, so Richie would have to eat out and go to the neighborhood laundromat to do his washing. Richie still did not see a single white woman inside. He felt glum indeed. Man, things are working out in front like I thought they would. But you only now reach. You have to give it time, said Roderick. Rishi was to shed a little tear in his pillow that night. House where Roderick worked filling orders. Listen, whenever the supervisor around, look busy, huh? Even if you have nothing to do, sweep the floor 3 times if you have to. Just look like you're working. You know how white bosses like to think we're lazy, but if you work hard, in a few months you could move up to fill in orders like me, said Roderick. But Richie was miserable. The white women on the warehouse floor he had ever seen. They were built like army tanks. A few secretaries in the office were good looking and shapely, but even when he looked their way, hissed slightly, and nodded suggestively in their direction, they ignored him and went about their business. If he hissed and nodded at any girl in Curab Junction, they would dissolve into fits of pent-up desire. Stay away from them, woman and them, said one Roderick. You'll get brought up for sexual harassment if you try anything with them. They have strict laws in Canada about that kind of thing, especially in the workplace. But where you just go to get a little action? It have any shady ladies here? Oh, it have plenty. But you don't want the street walkers down by Eaton Center, as they're drugs and they're dirty for spite. You don't want to catch any disease. And the high class ones, doing it for businessmen, they out of your class and price range. Oh God, what you bring me here for? Rishi complained. Action. Well, you have to take your time and meet somebody and build a relationship, said Roderick. Me don't want to marry. I just want a little in and out action. I don't want anything for forever, Rishi said. Yeah, but the woman ain't gonna put out for you unless they think it's for some investment of time or money, or both, said Roderick. Look, I have a little white lady I quite comfortable with for the time being. It's true she about 10 years older. Sex sweet too bad. How you get she? Richie wanted to know. I bide my time and socialize in the community a bit. I meet she when I help she carry out a heavy bag to Chicago. She invited me back to her house for supper, and in 2 toes we land up in bed. But enough about me. Join the gym. Look by the YMCA. Look at our panyard near here. Richie tried everything to socialize in the community. He found the panyard nearby, but it was only retirees learning to play pan that frequented the place. He tried the laundromat where he washed his clothes, but it was mainly brown people like him. No white meat there. Try the church, Roderick suggests. It does have Pancake Tuesday regular. If you don't see any white girl to suit you, at least get a cheap meal. Man, at this stage, I'm willing to try, Richie said in some frustration. This is so wonderful.
Thank you, Jerry.
Okay, Heather, you say you wanted to continue with that?
Yeah, and that,
So
you
we,
know, you leave all the bad things for me to say.
right, okay.
Oh, I
Go
didn't
ahead.
realize it. Was- Okay, go ahead.
That's okay. Next Tuesday, Richie gone by the church Roderick told him about. For $3, it was all you could eat pancakes, fried potatoes, bacon, maple syrup, and salad. 3 matronly white-haired white women sharing out the food. They calling him darling and thing. He relaxed and he eat his belly full. Just then a young lady came out from the back with the dessert tray. She bring a plate of donuts and a tea for him. She smiled. I have not seen you here before, she said. My friend just told me about this place and I'm trying it out, Richie said. I detect an accent. Where you from? The young lady asked. I just come from Trinidad, Richie replied. She sat down by him and they chatted. She told him she was a volunteer at the church and she was a part-time student at the community college and part-time worker in a senior's home. The girl was not good looking. She was of a slight build and with long, dirty blonde hair that looked greasy. She had tiny breasts and narrow hips. She was soft-spoken and had a kindly demeanor that appealed to Rishi, however, as he was starved for female attention. As the evening wore on, fellow diners finished eating and trickled out into the evening, all except Rishi, who tarried over his last donut. The 3 older ladies put away all the leftover food, washed up the dishes, and straightened out the kitchen. Then they went home, leaving the young lady to clean off and tidy up the tables in the church hall, sweep the floor, and lock up. That is when the white girl fall on Richie, rubbing up to him and stroking his leg. Oh God, it happening, Richie thought, as the girl grabbed his face and started kissing him hard. He gave in. The girl was like a tiger. She clawed and tore at him, pulled him on the floor of the church, stripped him down, and she swept the floor with Richie. What she was lacking in looks and bodily attributes, she more than made up for with her sexual prowess. She knew what to do with the little she had. Altogether, in the church, she gave in to pleasure. Rishi didn't know what hit him. He lay there spent. She had him twice more before they staggered from the church to go home. Richie could not wait until the next day to tell Roderick. He bounced into work with his signature hop and drop step, grinning from ear to ear. Man, I strike white gold last night at the church. I meet a girl there and she throw herself at me. And all of that, including food for just $3, Richie boasted. Good for you, man. Didn't I tell you it was just a matter of time? You seeing she again? So she say, look, she just texted me this morning to say she coming by me tonight. Richie looked pleased as punch. You're making enough money to buy she a little something from time to time and keep she sweet and still send money home for your mother. You go be okay, man. Well, I have to go by the church regular for Pancake Tuesday and introduce that white girl to more exotic menus like saltfish. Why wait until Tuesday to try it tonight? Roderick and Rishi laughed out loud. Roderick felt good to have his old partner back. We go make things good here in Canada, boy. And that is how Richie finally get his first date of white meat in foreign. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. So we heard from the author. Before I hand over to Gersha, I just want to read the blurb of this collection. Picong, Pilau, and Pepper Sauce, Tales from a Caribbean Storyteller. This collection of short stories was written to reflect Caribbean life in my home island country of Trinidad and Tobago. As the title suggests, the stories contain witty repartee, which is the definition of the word picong in the picong, pilau, and pepper sauce local parlance. A mix of mores, pilau, which the local dish of a mix of peas, rice, meat, and spices suggests, and the obligatory pepper sauce that flavors the whole meal, so to speak. These stories reflect life among the common people, featuring well-known characters such as the Saga Boy, Sweet Man, Lady of the Night, and ministers who have fallen from grace. They belong to the underbelly of society, which exists across all walks of life. Each story makes use of the Trinidad vernacular with colorful folk sayings and wry local observances. Characters are drawn from the common man, living everyday life as circumstances allow. Woven into each plot are the simple joys, harsh realities, misplaced love and lust, and the mysteries that often attend daily life among ordinary people. Here then is an offering of stories utilizing a recipe of picong, pilau, and pepper sauce from my humble literary menu, specially curated for your enjoyment. And that is what this book is all about. There are 6 sections. I noticed the book that is comprised of 6 sections. And June read from section 1, Village Family Stories. And Motilal and myself read from Ghost Stories. Vishnu was supposed to have read from Stories of Caribbean Life. And there's a section called Christmas Stories of, that was not included in the list of readings. Secrets and Scandals were read by Leslie Ann and Natasha. And Trini in the Diaspora was read by Jerry and the author herself. So I'd like to congratulate you once again, Heather, on your work and on being selected as Poetry and Prose's Author of the Month of February 2025. With that, I'd like to hand over to the leader of the group, Kusha Mahabir.
Hi, thank you so much, Krishna.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for hosting. It was wonderful to have you chair. We have to have you chair more often. Heather, thank you so much for sharing your work with us. I loved your stories, and I really admire the way you do character development, because you really see in such a short space of time these fully formed characters from you. Thank you
Well,
so much.
thank you. I just kind of go with the flow. I don't really think it out too much in advance. So yeah, it's good to know that. It's good to see my work through the eyes of other people. So, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to do that.
No, it's certainly a pleasure, and it's a pleasure having you in Poetry and Prose. I hope we see more from you. I wanted to, like, for me with character development, I go through, like, I'm one of those crazy people that go through a list of like, what's my character's favorite color, what's my character's favorite this, and I do that for like each different character. Maybe I overthink it, but I love how you can, especially reach me. You know him. Like I see him fully formed in my head. The way you wrote him was excellent.
Um,
Um,
Gersh, Gersh, just give me one little interruption to make a correct an omission. Cynthia Birch read from Stories of the Caribbean, The White Lady and the Silver Man. Okay, I can't leave out Cynthia at all after that write-up she gave us.
Yes. And I
actually,
like
Gersh,
even Cynthia's piece. I liked Cynthia's piece as well because you really didn't stick to one point of view. It shifted from different viewpoints throughout.
well, I've learned the hard way what white people think of the Caribbean. It's just as Alyssa was saying. So, yeah. So I had to put some of that in there. Some of the ignorant people that have said things to me are immortalized in these stories. I didn't call names, but I gave them, from their mouths come those words. But also, Gershia, getting back to your point of you setting up your characters beforehand, that there's nothing wrong with that either, because it's just to each his own. Because that poet that I mentioned to you, Sylvia Plath, she also wrote prose, but she did that. She would sit down and list everything that she wanted her characters to be first before she went into the story. So everybody has a different method.
That's true. That's true. I'm
Yeah.
gonna open the floor if anyone wants to say anything to Heather before we close.
Yeah, Jerry here, if I may say a thing or two.
Hi, Jerry.
Yes, well, I think I've read all Heather's stories now, and a couple of things amaze me in that Heather had a pretty cloistered upbringing because her father was my old QRC principal, Ralph Laltu, and if he treated her anything like he treated us, I think she was pretty much locked down. And yet, so from this very cloistered environment, she went to Canada and lived there for probably about 40 years. I don't want to give away her age. And it amazes me that, how she could write so expressively about things in Trinidad which she did not personally experience, because so authentic as well. And then she's also writing about guys. So here's a woman who has lived almost all her life in Canada, writing about Trini men and getting it so accurate. I mean, one thing that struck me when I read this was about Rishi putting on Brill cream. Now, the last time I used Brill cream was about 50 or 60 years ago. I don't know if the thing still exists, but that is not something that women wore. That was something that men wore. You put you grease up your hair with Brill cream. So how the heck, Heather would know about these things? So
Yeah.
that's my comment. All her stories are different, all are refreshing, all are entertaining, and all are authentic. This is the real Trini thing you're reading here. And I just have to thank her for this wealth of literature. And I'm trying to encourage her and encompass it all into one big book, which I'm sure will be a bestseller.
Jerry is my I every time I write something, I send it to him. So he's my sounding board, so
Yeah, and each one, I enjoy each one. They just keep getting better and better.
I don't know where to go from here now.
Well, now is the phase of the questions and the marketing. Any other comments?
If I may, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Denise.
Welcome.
I would like, first of all, to congratulate Heather on her continued amazing work. I have been inspired by Heather, her writing, her encouragement to me to start writing and finding myself as a female living in Trinidad. I can so relate to what Heather is saying. She writes as though she has been in Trinidad last week. She is really an amazing writer. Congratulations, Heather. I was laughing and chuckling all the way. So
Denise, I have to
um,
send you a book, girl, because
just and excuse my look. I was just cooking my dog food. You know how it is, Heather.
yeah.
Yes, but girl, congratulations. I really admire your work, what you have done. You're really doing great. You had me chuckling. I was chuckling at the Saga Boy and the people down the street, the mass. You were good. You're really, really amazing, Heather.
I kept all the explicit parts out, because I say I have so many older people reading. I didn't want to embarrass them too much.
No, you're great, Heather. You're great. I had to join in. I am so pleased. I am so proud of you. You really do good work. Really
all
amazing.
Denise and I are cousins,
Yes,
from the
we are.
Freeport area by mommy's side.
Welcome, Denise. Hopefully, we'll get some of your stories soon.
Well, hopefully, I have to run them by Heather and Ron first before anything, but I love it.
Denise just retired. She's a retired teacher, so she can write.
Yeah, I've been teaching. It's something that runs in the family. We put pen to paper and we just start. But Heather, you're an inspiration. I admire your work. I admire what you're doing. You make me laugh. You had me enjoying my stuff. My doggies were looking at me like, "Mommy, what are you laughing at?" But it was so much fun. It really is it was an enjoyable couple of hours, Heather. Congratulations.
Thank you for coming in. My gosh.
Thank you,
I'll have to
Heather.
let you know the next time I'm on.
Yes, let me know, okay? And I'm definitely going to be here. Thank you all for allowing me on. It was a lovely show. I especially love how the lady, I can't remember your name, please excuse me, the lady from Switzerland, her Trini accent, and she actually mastered the words, some pronunciations.
Altia.
That was really amazing.
Yeah. Denise, we have people from all over, so.
I realize that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because Arlene is in the States as well, so.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Yes. So nice meeting you all. Congratulations. Okay.
And I'll see you. I'll have to Zoom you sometime, Denise.
Yes, do that.
Thank you for joining us. I'm noting there's a Tammy online. I don't know if you would like to share anything. Well, you don't have to, but thank you for joining us. If there are no other comments, hold on. Okay.
Well, everything fit into the 2 hours there, Gershia, so that was good. Yeah.
We've been pretty good. So with that, we will close. Heather, again, once more, we celebrate you. Thank you for sharing your work. And thank you for being our February Author of the Month for 2025.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Frank. I loved when I got your questions, I had to laugh. Especially when you said, what do you have to say for your